So I've been meaning to do this for quite some time. As y'all can already see, I have Joshua here, which how great of a surprise is that? For those of you who know me, I'm Amanda Amor. For those of you who don't, welcome to my channel, The Influence of Love. Today I have here my husband. We've been married for a year and it has been really real. It's been an incredible journey being with him, and we've been wanting for quite some time to do some videos. Now, I can't promise we'll be doing a lot of videos in the future, but I know we wanted to do this video. We're gonna discuss today our journey from basically being both of us raised in a Christian household, but not really having a relationship with Christ, kind of being raised up in religiosity, to us actually establishing a relationship with God from the time that I got saved. This whole video for me is really for people to understand, like, that journey of going from being an unbeliever to fully crossing over with God is different for every person. This is just our story. I ultimately want people to understand I'm just telling our story, so you can pray to God, or whatever revelation hits you throughout this video, just go to God in prayer and be like, God, is this similar to my situation? Because ultimately every situation with God is different. Sometimes God will bring one person to Christ, which I came first to Christ and then Joshua came to Christ. And that's kind of how God will work. Sometimes he'll use one person to then open up the heart of the other one. And I'm just going to explain how that happened for us. So for those of you who are, have already been here on my YouTube channel, I hope that you have already watched my video on how I came to Christ, basically my testimony on how I went from hating Christians to becoming one. So I really honestly, what I didn't know then was that I really hated the religious spirit. And I hadn't been around enough Christians that had a true relationship with God, although I had encountered them, but I couldn't tell the difference. So I didn't really have like a hatred towards people who loved God. I never had a hatred towards God either. It was more towards like the church and like the church as a whole, and just like people who were not practicing what they preach, just a lot of hypocrisy. That was my struggle, and that was just part of my journey that I feel God has used for me to be able to better understand and be better used for the kingdom. So I'm not going to get into all that. I really want to encourage you to watch that video, and I have it linked below in the description box. As well as, if you guys haven't checked out my depression video, that's also a part of my journey. So I want you guys to check that out, my battle with depression part 1 and 2. It's just going to better help you understand me as a person and just the dynamic of our relationship, because it really ties into like just everything with me and Joshua. So today I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about, what it was like before I met Joshua, how it was when we got together and we weren't yet saved. And then I'm going to let him come in and talk a little bit about, just give his part. We're just going to kind of go back and forth kind of like that. So yeah, before we also get into it, I have to say this. We have a podcast called Love and Level Up. I've been wanting to come on here to have both of us say it so you guys know that it's real. Yes, it's happening. We created a podcast and we absolutely love the podcast, and we've received such great feedback. And I wanted you to share a little bit, Josh. How do you feel about us finally having started our podcast, Love and Level Up?
Well, first off, Love and Level Up is the podcast name. If you guys don't have it, or if you guys not subscribed to it, I would subscribe to it. And make sure you guys, when you listen to it, leave a rating and a review.
Yeah,
because,
it's very important.
We would like to have your feedback. But having a podcast with Amanda is amazing. Just the feedback that we've been getting as doing it as a couple and stuff like that, and some of the topics that people may deal with but may not know how to express yourself. Like we did a more recent one on the mindset of just being an introvert. Yes. And what that's like. So for all my introverts out there, that'll be a podcast you'll want to listen to. And then we also do podcast episodes for creatives that just are artistic and want to put their creative art out there. We also do Christian and faith-based podcast episodes, yes, which is really great.
Those are my favorite. Those are the ones I really snap on because I just love it. Gets me going. See, yeah. I didn't like church before. Now I love talking about anything that involves the kingdom. This is God.
Absolutely. So, it's just great information and our experiences and stuff like that. And just putting that out there so other people that may feel similar to how we may have felt in the past, or something that they're dealing with, that they can tune into and listen to. So again, the podcast name is the Love and Level Up Podcast. Go ahead, it's on every streaming platform.
So if you have iPhone, of course, it's Apple Podcasts. If you have Android, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. So there's several different streaming platforms, and it basically caters to most of them. You can't miss it, yep. So yeah, you can't miss it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right into this. So I really wanted to talk about just like more of our relationship. I know that a lot of people really like love our relationship. For those of you who watched our video on our engagement, that's one of my favorite videos here on my channel, as well as recently I put together for our 1 year anniversary, just different clips from our wedding day. And so many people gave me such great feedback on it and were just like, oh my God, I loved watching this. And it really made people recognize and realize how important it is to get married, especially for kingdom couples or people who want to have godly covenants. And so I kind of just wanted to explain a little bit about, you know, who I was before I met Josh. So honestly, like before I met Josh, I always knew I wanted to be with one man. I didn't want to date around. I didn't want to be in like 10 different relationships. I didn't want like to be associated with like 5 different people that be like, oh yeah, I dated her. Like I was never that kind of girl. So I just knew I wanted to be with one person. And I did wait out for, you know, having that one official relationship. Josh was really my first official boyfriend, like official. So we've had a lot of firsts together, me and him. Like everything has been the relationship I have with him was the relationship I always knew I was supposed to have. But as a young person, I grew up going to church. Again, I grew up kind of religious, but I was never really taught, like, I was taught, of course, to wait till marriage. Like, I was taught, you know, celibacy, but I wasn't really taught how to date. So there were times where I kind of got caught up. Even back then, I didn't know that you could still get a soul tie, even if you weren't physically involved with a person. I didn't know that I had like soul ties to people. I had got caught up in situationships where it was like I was never official with a person, but I caught feelings. And these are the things that I really wanted to discuss more on my channel, because I know so many people go through things like that. But really, honestly, a lot of this stuff was super short-lived. It was super mature, which is me being young, you know? And I know that we already kind of look super young, so people assume that we're probably younger than what we are. But regardless, I'm 28, I'm pretty young. And Joshua, you just turned 25, right?
Yeah,
just turned 25. So, yeah, like honestly, I was really waiting out for the right person. Like I just knew like I wanted a guy who respected me. And honestly, by the time Joshua came into my life, we once met one time in 2012, but then in 2014 is really when we started like talking, and then we started dating June 23rd of 2014. And it's so crazy because like we really, during that time, like I really had already kind of figured out what I didn't want. So I think that by the time he came into my life, I knew like, no, he's a good guy. And I had told him, like, I was like, look, I want to wait till marriage. Like, it's funny because I didn't care to go to church, and I didn't really honor God in all of my ways. Like my behavior was very worldly, and I hated the word worldly because I felt like in church it was always a way for people to make you feel like you weren't good enough. Like I just hated certain terminologies and things because I felt condemned by it. But I think there were times where God was trying to convict me. I just didn't know the difference. And so when me and Joshua met, like honestly, it was like the turning of a whole new chapter for me. Like he was so loving, he was so kind to me, and we really had such a healthy relationship. Like he was such a great person to me, and I felt like my life was just coming together. Like everything every year was getting better. I was growing so much as a person, and I felt like I had finally found my equal in life. I had finally found someone who understood me. Like even when I first told him, like before we started dating, like I want to wait till marriage, like I thought like, man, this dude is gonna like, he's just gonna walk away. He's not gonna care. Like he's gonna be like, I'm good. Like, but he really didn't. Like he really respected me. He was like, wow, like if you're telling me that, then you must be really serious. So I think that from the beginning, I always saw like he never tried to tempt me or do anything to kind of hurt me. Like that was not how he was. And he was just really loving towards me. And he was also very honest. Like he told me a lot of things that I felt like I used to try to beg other people to be real with me, or like to get off the surface and like, or to open up. Like every time I would try to talk to a guy, I would try to like, I would really want them to trust me. And like with Josh, I never had to do any of those things. Like he just trusted me from jump.
So with the whole thing with the trusting, my issue was in the past, I would have problems with opening up with, you know, people that I was in talking or dating at the time. And that will become the problem of the relationship, which will cause the relationship to fail. So therefore, I knew I had to switch up what I was doing. But the entire time, I didn't know it was me. You know what I mean? I thought I was opening up, at least from what I initially thought. But as the time progressed and throughout every situation or every relationship, I realized, the person will always tell me the same thing, like, oh, you're not opening up to me. It's like, it's something that you're not telling me. I'm like, well, what more do you want to know?
Yeah, as girls, we want to know everything.
Right. So that's one of the things that I realized, because I was going through a lot at the time, even right before I met her. So, once I met her, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be the problem if this relationship don't last. I'm not going to be,
you don't want to be the one to blame for it all falling apart.
Yeah, so I don't want to be that person. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna open up and see how this goes. And I explained to her everything I was going through and dealing with as a young man, and just trying to going through life and experiencing all that I was experiencing. And I told her and explained everything to her. And at that point I was just like, yo, once I did it to her and I seen how she accepted it, I was like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things where it got to a point where it was therapeutic for me, because I got to know someone that understand me, and she knew everything about me. And even if it wasn't going to work out, I was willing to take, go down for it, because I was just like, okay, if this doesn't work out, at least she knows who I am. I was never being different towards her. I was never acting like someone that I wasn't. I was just being upfront with who I am as a person. And I think that that's the reason why our relationship still stands to this day, because we just have that open communication, that honesty, where it's just like, you can tell me anything and I can tell you anything.
Yeah.
And I think that for your relationship to work, that's really what it needs. But, going back to before we got saved, it was just like that. And, when I met Amanda, it was more or less, I was coming into myself. I can definitely tell, even when she mentioned to me, like, I'm gonna just wait till marriage, that she knew who she was. And still, we still are evolving and changing. So that for me, when she said that and explained, that's what she was accepting in her life at the time, that for me, it was just like a code of honor and respect. Like, wow, I respect a woman that's like that, because there isn't a lot of young females at the time that was doing that, to be quite honest, at least they wasn't open and honest about it, at least not with me. So for me, that was just a level of respect that I just had for her. And I think that, I took that initially, and I just wanted the relationship to be surrounded around that, you know what I mean? And just to honor this woman in terms of just like, okay, let me get to know you, and let me get to know everything that there is to know about you. Mm-hmm. And so that's how our relationship grew organically. Those were one of the things that I realized in terms of, how she was and how we were to grow organically. It was just going to have to be like that. And then, there were times where I was away long distance, and I think we're going to do another video on how to be in a long distance
that's a whole other thing. So we were also in a long distance relationship throughout the entire time that we dated, which that's like a whole other can of worms. So I was like, that's like opening Pandora's box right now. Like, we're not even going to get into all that, although we're going to mention it a bit, because it does play, of course, a part in our story. But we're going to get into a whole other video about that, because people always ask us, like, our advice on long distance relationships. How can you do it? How do I know it's for me? So we promised y'all that video. And
in terms of our relationship before, I guess we all, before we really got with God and got serious with God, I think that our relationship was it was always evolving and growing, year in, year out. We was always talking about future, and we was always, mentioning to ourselves the things that we wanted to see for our lives. And so that for me was inspiring. We always had a good relationship when it came to talking.
Sure.
At first I wasn't a big, expressive person, but she was, and that helped me to just be open up more and stuff like that. And so like, throughout the course of the years, that's just how our relationship began to grow, and still to this day.
So now I kind of basically want to walk you guys through the portion of when we started to change into becoming definitely more submitted to God and getting saved for real. So we're going to share both our sides, because for Josh, his journey he felt was different from mine, because for a long time I used to always tell him, we weren't, like, you weren't Christian, and he used to always tell me, yes, I was. I always identified as Christian. The thing was, for me, I never identified as Christian because of the fact, and you guys heard that in my whole story of my testimony, again, that I'll have linked below. I used to feel like I was not a Christian. I would say I was raised Christian, because my mom was like super, like, my mom was like a Christian mom. Like, we could not listen to secular music. If we had guests over, it was not a party, it was a dinner. Like, my mom was very particular about certain things. Like, now when I create content, or like when I talk, even just talking to her over the phone, like, she'll be like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. I don't know why I made a big deal out of that. She was very particular when it came to certain things. So like my dad too, my dad as well, like they were both like on the same page with certain things. Like when it came, well, actually no, I lied. My dad was a lot more lenient when it came to certain things. Like he was kind of more chill, but if my mom put her foot down about something, he was like, listen to your mom. So for me, the way I saw Christianity was like, if you're a Christian, like you can't do certain things. Like you can't say you're a Christian and curse. You can't say you're a Christian and be listening to like trap and hip hop music. Like that's the way I took it. Like if you're a Christian, you have to be holy. And so that's why I didn't identify as being a Christian, because I was like, I felt like wanting to go to church every Sunday or like wanting to be a Christian woman was lame. Like that's just how I saw it. Like I was like, that's not who I'm trying to be. Like I'm just trying to be me. I'm trying to be free. I'm trying to be creative. I'm trying to be fly. Like I'm trying to be bossed up in life. Like that's not who I want to be. So I was very much like, as a young person, I was still finding myself. I really didn't know my identity. I wasn't established. I wasn't I was none of the things that I think people identify with me as now. Like a lot of people are like, you're so strong. You seem so independent. Like all those characteristics came after me knowing and getting to know Christ. So when I got saved, my life changed. Again, if you guys listen to my personal testimony, you guys know that I got supernaturally saved in my bedroom. Like I went through basically, it just happened gradually over time, but I got saved in May of 2016. So we had almost been together already for almost 2 years by the time I got saved. And we were together completely before getting married. We were dating for 4 years. So it was like halfway through my relationship, God does this huge shift in my life. And it was crazy because I remember at that very moment, like when God came into my life and I realized God was real, I was sitting on my bed. It was like in the pitch dark black. I was crying. I was full of the Holy Spirit. Like I just couldn't believe it. Like I was like, oh my God, God is real. Like I can't believe I didn't know this all this time. And I remember one of the first things after everything he was communicating to me, because first it was just like God. It was in my head like, oh my God, God is real. God loves me. Like everything makes sense now. Like God is not like even talking about it feels so surreal, because it's like, man, like I didn't go to church. Like I always thought like, will I get saved one day if I go to church and they do like a call for the lost? No, I was so numb to that. I was so used to it. Honestly, like it just happened so personal, and I feel like that's why for me, I don't take my walk as a joke. And that's why I feel like I was so on fire for God, because I was like, no, like I think God always knew like it had to be like that for me or I wouldn't take it seriously. And one thing that did come across my mind, I was just like, what about Joshua? Because I kind of already understood, like I didn't really start our relationship with like us wanting to serve God or us coming together as a Christian couple. It was more just like I met a person who respected me, who loved me, who definitely honored the fact that I wanted to be celibate till marriage. So he also, I knew he had a background of being Christian. And even like there was old texts that like years later I would find that I had like screenshot of me saying like things like, you know, God's gonna take care of us, God has it all understood. Because as those of you who know, when I went through depression, like I just knew God was real and I knew God was encountering me. But I was of the belief of me and God are good. I just don't want anything to do with the church. I just don't want anything to do with like, you know, Christians and all that. Like I really didn't. Like I was just very opposed to it all. So yeah, like I told God, I was like, God, what about Joshua? Like, what about my relationship? But like in that moment, it just kind of all came to me. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to surrender it and I'm just going to give it to God. Like, I'm going to give it to God and I just told God, I was like, look, God, like I literally surrendered it to him right there. I was like, if I'm meant to be with Joshua, then what's meant to be will be. If not, then, you know, I'm just going to let you guide me, because ultimately I don't want to be with someone who you don't want me to be with, or who doesn't want to be with me, or, you know, I ultimately want what's best for him. I want the person for him that's going to love him. If it's not meant to be me, then I'm okay with that, guy. Like I'm okay with the fact that maybe for 2 years you let me be in this relationship and let him love me, because we were already in love. Like a year in, we had told each other like, I'm in love with you, you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like we were one foot in, one foot out. We were all the way in with each other, you know? But, and I felt like we were at a good pace in our relationship, but I felt that, and that's what I did. And so after I surrendered Joshua to God, what happened was so interesting, because I actually had I was more, obviously by the time I got saved, now I was open to going to church. I had gone to church with Joshua at his church, Solid Rock. And like I told y'all, the whole experience I had, like it was a word on sowing a seed. And it was talking about how sowing seed wasn't just like a tithe or an offering like I had learned growing up, you know, going to church my whole life, but it was also like you can sow seeds into a person, or you could even sow yourself into the kingdom. And so as y'all know who watched that video, I had like a true Holy Spirit encounter. Like they started playing Yes by Shekinah Glory, and you know when that song comes on, it's over with. Like you about to say yes. So I was, and at that point I knew God was talking to me, because that was one of the few songs that I was listening to that I knew of that like would really touch me, and I would like bawl. Like I had so much conviction that I had ran from God. So like that day was super uncomfortable for me. Like I mentioned in the video, now Joshua's gonna say his piece and like how he saw my changes. So before that day even happened, my bad. Before that day even happened, I had not told no one that I had got saved. So I wanted to wait, because again, we were in this relationship. I wanted to wait till Joshua came into town so like I could explain to him. It was a huge change in my life. Like I had just given my life to Christ. We had not built that foundation in God to be in a relationship. So when he came down, I told him, and he took it really well. Like I didn't know how he was gonna take it. And it was so funny because he was in Bible college. So it had crossed my mind before, because he had switched schools while we were dating. Like I was like, what if he becomes like super Christian? Like I'm like, I don't know if we could be together. Like I literally had crossed my mind. So yeah, so he was in a Christian college, right? And yeah, he took it like really, really well. And then we had that day where we went to his mom's church, Solid Rock, and that was a church he grew up going to. And so me being so full of the Holy Spirit, when they said who wants to step forth and sow themselves into the kingdom during that service, I literally got up, went to the front, and I was like, the Holy Spirit was all over me. I was crying. His mom still talks about it to this day. Oh man, God was just touching Amanda. Like she was crying. Like it was so beautiful. Like all this stuff, because I really I had a moment, and it was very uncomfortable for me because of the fact that Joshua had never, like, he's seen me cry, he's seen me be vulnerable, but he had never seen me like that. So that was like a new experience for me. I didn't know if he felt like weirded out by it, or like what the heck just happened, because I knew he had been to church, but I just kind of, and you would go to church with me and my mom, because my mom would invite you sometimes, like randomly my mom would like, let's go to church. But I didn't know how you took it. So I want you to say like your part on how you saw like my whole change and everything that happened.
Yeah, so initially when I came down from school, and she had expressed, you know, because I was going to a Christian Bible school, but the thing was like I was religious at best. I grew up in church. Like my mom would take me to church every Sunday. It was practically, almost mandatory. And so that's I had good principles in my life always. And so I pride myself in those principles. I did know about the church, and I did know about the Holy Spirit. So none of that stuff was weird to me. And then eventually what I did was I ended up going to a school in South Carolina first. You know, and I wanted to go to school there. I wanted to go play ball and stuff like that. But I ended up being so homesick to the point where I wanted to be closer to my family. And so therefore I had transferred, you know, my schooling and stuff like that back to Florida. And I ended up finding a small school here, a small Christian college that I ended up going to. And so being at the Christian college, I was learning a lot about theology and stuff like that. And it was really helping me in just terms of, you know, where God was, and in terms of, you know, the outlook and stuff like that, and the biblical principles. But, you know, I still was like, I was still listening to secular music. I was still doing my thing. I was still, you know what I mean? Just young and just living life and thinking, well, you know, I'll let God have me when I'm ready. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. But when it was one of the times I had came down to visit, and I remember at the time I was listening to like some, you know, some like just hip hop music. I was listening to rap music in the car, and we had pulled up to our house, and she was just like, "Oh, can you cut the music off?" And she started telling me about, you know, that she got saved, and like she really, you know, she's serious about it now. She's for real about it, and you know, I just took it with a you know, just with a proper approach, like, you know, yo, like that's what's up, and thank you for telling me. And you know, and I once again it got to a point where it was just like another level of honor and respect that I had for her, because it was just like, yo, this is a person that's definitely destined to do some great things, you know what I mean? And to be a part of that, I definitely would like to be in her life as long as I could. So that ended up happening. You know, I still was just like, all right, God, like, you know, what do you want me to do? You know, do I be with this person to not be fully committed to them in terms of what they believe in or anything like that? Because I was still Christian, but at the same time, I was like, well, how deep do you want me to go? Right. And so, yeah, we ended up that same that same weekend we ended up going to service with my mom at the church down there in Miami, and she had her her cry out. She was in the spirit, but that for me, she may think I was weirded out by it, but I was not. I mean, I seen that growing up, so for me, I was used to it. But at the same time, I embraced her, I hugged her, and I thought that her having that just being vulnerable in that moment was very special in our relationship, because that was a new level that we never reached before. And so like I was grateful for that moment. But then God had to deal with me after that in terms of the process and the change that I saw in her. It caused me to go through that similar process and change. And then for us to come together and be so tight, I feel like our experiences, yet different, it was still the same. And I saw her change from the moment she told me, and then gradually from there, her level of just being on the quest for God was just increasing throughout. And so for me, it was just like, I was a little bit taken back. I'm like, it's a whole new person. Like, look, who is this person?
And that's what I remember, because you told my mom that, like, he was talking to my mom and he was like, that's a whole other girl in that room. Because it was like you were talking with her and I was somewhere else in the house. And you're like, yeah, she's a whole other person. But you meant that like in a way, like in respect. Like you're like, wow, like she's changed.
Yeah, and she, you were able to change gracefully, which I thought was just something special. And for me to see that and experience that, because like, again, we was with each other 2 years before that. Right. And we was just living our lives, just doing the regular
what
thing.
We knew to do.
Right. And so, when she got with God, it was just like, yeah, it's like a whole nother person, like, that I'm dealing with and that I'm talking to. It's like, you change in the blink of an eye, and it was something special to see and to be around that. I just felt the anointing, and I felt the oil run over from her to me in terms of that experience that she had when she got saved. And so that caused me to be like, the question, God, like, okay, if this is the relationship that I'm supposed to be in, I'm supposed to be with this woman, then God, where do you want me? And so all of those questions start to occur, and once those questions start to occur, I start to receive my answers. And then I just got serious about it, and I never looked back after that. And now we've been able to come together and just create this bond that we had today, and I'm thankful for it.
And I wanted kind of to explain too for people, because I know that I think that I didn't even realize how uncomfortable at times the transition would be, because what happened was after that service, I was thinking that week in my room, like after having that exchange and him seeing me in that vulnerability, like, because I remember later that day, like I was at home with him and his mom, and he was like listening to worship music. So like I noticed like, dang, Josh was religious all this time. I couldn't see it, because he was never opposed to going to church with my mom. Even like he would raise his hands up, like when worship would come on, he would bow his head. He was very into it. So I was always like so thrown off, because it wasn't that we were ever bad or malicious, but we just lived very worldly. Like we were just young and just doing what all the younger kids would do, right? So for me, I was just like, man, like, I don't know, we weren't in that place of maturity spiritually. So I was really taken aback when he would do things that I was like, oh, I thought he would not be open to this, But again, I didn't realize how he grew up. And so me getting around his mom's church and like, us finally having those moments, like I started noticing a lot of things that I hadn't noticed before. And so I remember like that same week, I told God, like, God, what am I supposed to do though? Because like, I don't know what's gonna like change this, or like, how do you want me to go about it, for me to like influence him. But not push him, because I knew like I did not want to push him into this decision. I knew that like God is love, and like I battled with that my whole life, but people like trying to force God on me. So I didn't want to do that. So I was like, okay, God, if it's love, ultimately he has to see it that way, like you love him too. So literally I heard the Holy Spirit like clear as day say, sow into him. And I was like, oh man, like that's the Holy Spirit talking to me. And at the time I was reading The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren, and it was such a great book for me at the beginning of my walk, just learning how to be a Christian. It was like the perfect book after getting saved, and like learning how to like embrace the church. And like, so I said, you know what, I'm gonna buy him that book. So I bought him the book, he read it, and he really loved it too. So I knew like just little things like that, because in the past, like I was like buying him things that like I shouldn't have bought him, like buying him like a CD that was like one of our favorite artists, or like, you know what I'm saying, things that I wouldn't do anymore. Now I'm trying to sow into him, not from where we were, but from where I would want him to be, right, in God, and from what I know God is working on us with. So like I told y'all with or if you guys saw my video on my experience with Jezebelic leadership. At that time, I was going to a church that was a cult. I did not know it. And the exchanges and the things I was dealing with spiritually at times was affecting our relationship, because the leader I was under, the mentor at this church, like, she would attack my relationship a lot. And it was because from day one, she saw that we were a kingdom couple. She picked it up. She was very prophetic. She was fully operating under the Jezebel spirit. And so I have nothing against this person, but in, reference to just telling our story, that's what happened. And it was just like in little things, like the way that she would talk to me, things that she would say, just trying to put doubts on my relationship. There were times where I was trying to confide in her with things that, like, me and Joshua were just on a different page. We never like contemplated breaking up, or we were never fighting or arguing. It was more just like trying to see where each other was at. And it was probably like that from the time I got saved until, I remember it was like when we took that one trip to Orlando with Lex and Crystal. So that was like at the beginning of 2017. Like it was like that for like probably a little less than a year. Like it took me that much time for me to see the changes in him, because there were still things that like I would notice about him, or things that I would see him say that I was like, because he would tell me like, no, like I am really working towards it, or like, because I wouldn't really tell him like, hey, are you changing? It was just more like, where I'm at, where where do you feel you're at with God right now? You know what I'm saying? So I was always just trying to like get him to understand, like, I was cutting certain things out of my life, so I couldn't do the things that like we used to do. And we were never big on like partying or drinking or anything like that, but just like not being able to be in certain environments, not being able to chill maybe with certain types of friends that, we used to be able to go and be a part of certain things. Like I had changed, I had shifted as a person. So during that time, it was a bit uncomfortable, but by the time I had that trip, we went to Orlando with his sister, and we went to like a park, whatever. And during that same trip, because again, remember y'all, we were in a long distance relationship. So that's why it was also hard for me, because although we talked every day on the phone, it was harder for me to see his change. But by the time we came across each other again, it was like after the holidays. We would always see each other for the holidays. And then it was like a trip we took at the beginning of that year, like with family. I was able to see like, no, he has changed. Like I could finally see it, and I finally had peace in my heart that we're good. And it was so crazy because the mentor and the leader I was under, like, she never told me that she saw that on us from the beginning. Because it was at the beginning when I got saved that we had sat in church together on a Friday night for youth service. And she never told me that in all the time that she was around me, until like the very end of the time I was with her, that she was like, oh no, like you and him are really meant to be a kingdom couple. And like, I saw that on you all. And like, I was just like, oh, thanks. Like I felt good about it at first, but then I had to really think and go back, and I just was like, why didn't you tell me that before? Because she was always telling me like, are you sure he's the one? Are you sure he's the person that God? And I understood her questioning me, but at the same time, like I was like, okay, well, only God could reveal that to me. Only God could show me. And I think for them it was because they had this whole mentality of, you have to get married in the church. You have to, in regards to like the person God has for you, you're gonna find them in this church, which for me at times could be very cult-like. Like you're not gonna meet the person God has for you. He will let you meet them wherever they come from. Like, I don't think it has to be in the exact church you go to, although it can happen that way. You know what I'm saying? So they had a lot of good, again, like I told you on the past, they had like some really good advices when it came to dating in God, like definitely better than other churches I have been through or been to, where they just was like, oh, you just have to make sure you're equally yoked. But like, how do you know that, So that's even been a journey for us, because the way we came to Christ was so like unconventional. Like like most girls like that might look at me might think like, oh, she was Christian first and then she met her guy. Like no, like it was a complete like huge shift and change in our relationship, and we had to be patient. Luckily we were, and because we were long distance, I think that helped also in just building us and us just getting to that place.
And just to be honest though, like during the time period that you were dealing with your mentor and stuff like that, like I do, our relationship definitely was tested a little bit in terms of,
it was definitely like doubts that the enemy was trying to create, like trying to create doubt in our relationship.
Yes, it did get a little bit testy, but again, I think that what we went through was much more of more of a deprogram of how our relationship used to be the years prior. And so I think we definitely went through that stage where everything that we once knew had to come to a slow end. And that was the part where she was talking about me seeing the change and stuff like that, because I wasn't at the end of the goal. I wasn't at the end of change. I was changing. And so that for us was a deprogram and reprogram, and in terms of where we needed to be in Christ. And so that was a stage that was like, I think for a year, maybe a year or so, that we was going through that, and we was having conversations about like, yo, like, I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you're not with me on something, or I feel like I'm not with you on something. And so those are some testy times, some rocky times. But again, that's how you knew God was in the midst of all of that, because he needed us to be in that vulnerable stage so that we can become now close and tight. And now when we're moving forward, we would know how to deal with each other on a different level. And so that was the experiences that I felt like, you know, throughout the process of change that I was experiencing. It was just like, it definitely tested our relationship. And then I had to go through deprogram of what I knew, what I grew up in, what, you know, everybody around me was doing.
Yeah.
And I was by myself. I was by my lonesome, because again, she mentioned we was on a long distance relationship. So it's not like I had her to kind of like see every day and talk to every day. I mean, we was talking, but it was through the phone. Right, and so like the people that I was around, it was just like everybody was doing the same thing, just, you know, living the worldly life. But again, I was going through a lot, you know what I mean? Because I was changing in the middle of all of that. So I was changing in the middle of my circumstances. I was changing in front of the people that knew me to be one way, and I had to deal with all that and manage all that. And I think that I did a great job with the help of God.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when I finally looked up and I realized, wow, like, you know, after I realized, like, okay, we're equally yoked. This happened in 2017. I was like, okay, we got here somehow. Like, I think that when I would reflect and look back, like, whoa, how did that happen? You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't know how it was going to happen. It was just like, we just stuck it out because we had a good relationship. Like, that was the thing. Like, we were very good at communicating with each other. We were very patient, very loving, very understanding, you know, and he wasn't against it because, again, he was raised in it. And so me just really having that full surrender in God and him just seeing the fruit of my life, it impacted him and made him realize, like, what am I really doing with my life? One
of the things about me is that I was always driven. I was always passionate about whatever it is that I was doing. And I knew that I wanted to do business. I wanted to succeed in business. But I think that when I saw her change, right, and change so much spiritually, it caused me to react and be like, okay, I want to take it as seriously as she's taking it, because I see the change in her as a person. And so that for me is how I took the approach. It's like, okay, I want to change. I want to take it seriously, because the impact that she was having on just her surrounding and like people around her was just like, it was amazing to see at the time. And so that for me was what really got me to, you know, be like, all right, yeah, I'm serious about this thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was too for me. I think that I could not be in an unequally yoked relationship because I didn't want to affect his life. I didn't want him to, you know, affect mine. It's like I wanted us to be I wanted us to be in the situation that we were most at peace in, right? So I felt like if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But the fact that God worked it all out because we surrendered it, I surrendered it to him, and we said, okay, God, do your thing. I think that's why it came to where it came to, because I since I've been saved, I notice a lot of people, like, they don't know our story. They don't know this is what we went through. You know what I'm saying? Even people that are close to us don't really know. You know what I'm saying? They're just like, oh, they've always been like that. And it's like, no, we were not like this, you know? But I think it's because people have like a spirit of familiarity, and they're always like, yeah, but you guys always were both like a voice of reason. Like, it wasn't until this year recently that like we were talking about something. I'm like, that's the thing that people would always see on us. We were always taking the high road. We would always do the thing that was most sensible. We wouldn't just go off it. We wouldn't just self-sabotage off our feelings and our emotions when it came to certain things compared to others, you know, because I still feel like I did sabotage a lot when I was younger. But I think that compared to like our peers, they looked up to us because they're like, wow, you guys are so level-headed. You know what I'm saying? So that was the difference that I feel people saw in us. And so that's why, like, when I met Josh, I clearly could see that he was different. He was so set apart. Like, he did not think like other guys his age. And I think people always notice that on him. People always notice that on me too. Like, wow, like, she's so different. Like, she's so, you know, like, they could never really explain it. But it was just like one of those things, like, it's either understood or it's not. And so that's why I feel like we were such like a perfect match for each other. So I just wanted to like tell you all our story. Again, like, I don't have a solution. Like, I don't want people to watch this and think like, hey, what do you think I should do for my situation? I mean, you guys could ask, but I want any person who watches this, if you're in a transition where you've gotten saved, if you've now crossed over and you now want to make God everything in your life, right? Or you're here and your spouse hasn't, or your boyfriend or girlfriend hasn't, you have to understand that you really have to live out this lifestyle. Like, you really have to fully show them what it means to be a Christian. in order for them to understand. And you also have to be open to the fact that you might not be in the right kind of relationship, because I don't know how many women do this. They'll stay in a relationship or with a guy that they know is not God's will for their life. You cannot make anyone love you. You cannot make anyone love God. Like, that's a decision that has to happen in their heart and in their soul. And so I just wanted to leave off this video with just me giving my piece of advice, Josh, you giving your piece of advice on, if you're in this type of situation and you're going through that rough patch, like how we went through, what I recommend. First and foremost, I recommend turning to God. More than anyone or anything else. You can go to a pastor. I think that's great. You can go to people around you that go to your church. But again, what if you're not in a good place? Like I told y'all, I was in a cult. So I really didn't have people around me. Like there was like one or two people that I could talk to that were good people, even in a cult. Like honestly, there were people who were nice people, but you never know who could be lurking in the shadows. You never know who could be giving you advice that's anti-biblical or is very legalistic. And so you have to be very careful. You need to test the spirit with the spirit, and you need to always lean on the Holy Spirit. Go to God, ask God, God, what should I do? And let him speak to you directly. And then anyone else, of course, you can consult with them and they can guide you and lead you if they are fit. But if they are not, you need to be very vigilant about that, because it could be the enemy trying to cut off that covenant that God wants to have with you and your loved one or your significant other. And the same even for family members. If you feel like, you got saved and you have a family member that wants God but fights it, you know what I'm saying? You have to surrender them to God. Like you cannot force your family members to want God. You cannot force them to want to go to church. That's not how this works. And I feel like once you do that, to me, that's the number one advice I could give. Because people sometimes will come in my inbox and they'll ask me a question, and I'll always ask Josh, like, Josh, what should I tell this person? Because sometimes it'll be guys that they're Christian. They're like, hey, sis, I have this going on, like where I'm talking to this girl, but I don't know, or me and my girlfriend, you know what I'm saying? We're going through the situation, and they just see that I'm in a relationship that me and my husband, we really value God, so they want my opinion on things. But I want people to understand, I can give you input all day long, but I don't know your full situation. God knows your situation. He knows the end of the thing when you were at the beginning. So always turn to God more than anyone or anything. The Holy Spirit will never steer you wrong. Always be in prayer. You go into fasting. You could sow into the person you're with. Again, just sowing those seeds of just love, of understanding, of wisdom into them, patience. And that will make the biggest change. That will make that person more willing to listen or hear whatever you have to say.
The only thing I want to add to that is that once you have to come to a point where you make a decision in your life, number one, right? If you're going to get serious with God, get serious. Don't play around with it. But then you got to also embrace your calling that's on your life. And that's, you embrace that, then the people that's for you will be around you always. And the people that's not for you, then you will start to see them kind of decrease.
Yeah.
And so all of that means something. So if that person that you're with in that relationship, if that relationship especially is meaningful to you in a worldly view, then when you get with God, then it should also be meaningful. But if that relationship is just not that, then I think that you got to move on. And I think that the calling that's on your life is going to be around for a while. But if you don't embrace it, if you don't accept it, it can leave you, and you don't want to be that person.
And other people could steal those years off your life. And I really want to say this too. I'm gonna let you finish, because I don't want this point to leave. It's very important. Before questioning if the person next to you needs to surrender, ask yourself if you've surrendered. Have you fully surrendered to God? Because that could be the very thing that's stopping them from being able to be influenced by you, and for you being able to sow that seed into them. The fact that you have not fully surrendered your life to God, fully surrendered your significant other to God. Once you do that, the Holy Spirit and God will work out everything else. Everything else. Right. And it will let you know. And for some of y'all, you just know you with the wrong person. You just know you're too invested with the time and everything like that. You will know. And I believe that God could change people's heart. But I think we also have to be clear. Is God saying to walk away? And you haven't been listening, and you just want to do whatever you want? Because that was the thing. A lot of people say, oh, I came to Christ and I had to drop the relationship because this person, we was hellbound. We was doing a whole bunch of sinful stuff. Well, me and Joshua, yes, we had our worldly lifestyle, but we weren't doing things in secret, or, we were not so corrupt to the point where it was like, oh, we were just doing a whole bunch of just evil, bad stuff. Like, and it wasn't like he was a bad influence over me, I was a bad influence over him, but ultimately we were not influencing each other to the highest degree in God. And so you have to know the difference, because yes, at the end of the day, even Christians fall short, right? And we can sin. But I think you have to know the difference of what is the true, is this a person that you can truly have a relationship with, or is this just a person you're too scared to let go of because you think that you'd be nothing without them, because you think that God doesn't have something better for you when he does? It's the lie and the deception of the enemy to keep you bound to a relationship so that the true calling and the purpose and the destiny that God has on your life never meets you.
And another thing is just no matter the relationship, a relationship should stem on honesty and integrity. So
Amen.
Therefore, if
So
your relationship,
every type of relationship
is not open, if it's not honest, if you guys can't have open communication about stuff that may affect you or the person that you're with, then I think that is an issue that needs to get solved. And again, once you surrender to God, you have to also surrender that person to God as well, because God will do a work in them that may be different in what he's doing in your life, and he may cause separation to occur for the better establishment of who you are and who you guys are as two individuals. So
that's true.
That's the only advice that I have, man. It wasn't easy. Again, we went through tests, we went through certain problems and issues. Our relationship is not the best relationship, but it's a God-filled relationship, and we pride ourselves on that. And that's the only thing that I gotta add.
Yeah. So and I agree. We don't have a perfect relationship. I wouldn't say best, because I think we do have the best relationship. I love him. But the best, at least for me, like honestly, this is my favorite relationship that I have in my life. Like, it's just the person that God has given me. But yes, by no means necessary are we perfect. We're not perfect people. We're just people that are surrendered to God. We're people that we want God to use us, and we want to be aware of what are the things that are holding us back. But we don't want anyone who follows us to think that we're perfect or that we got it all figured out or anything like that, because that's not who we are. And I don't think that you can bring God any glory with putting up a facade. We rather be real. I'd rather be who I really am than be something I'm not. And that's what I want more than anything for us to be able to be used by God, even in our flaws, our insecurities, even in the things that God, even with the mistakes that we make. I want God to get the glory off of that, because that's what's real. That's what people really want. What people really want right now is God. And if you give them God, they're going to come back for more. But if you give them some, wrapped up in a bowl present fake thing, they know when they see it, that's not real. You're selling me a product. You're selling me something that looks like the real thing, but is not the real thing. And God ultimately is real. God is truth in all of his ways. He's not what's politically correct. He's not what's seeker friendly. He's not any of those things. And so I think we're living in a day and age now where if you're young and you're seeking the real true God, the God that, loves but also convicts, the God who, chastises those he loves, because there's a reasoning for that, then you have to understand that you will be tested. It's not as easy as doing whatever you want and living however you like, but ultimately the reward is beautiful at the end of the road. And for me to be able to sit here and say, oh my God, I remember so many times I'm like, yo, I'm gonna quit YouTube. I can't keep doing the beauty videos I'm doing. Like, it's just not making sense. But for me to be able to be here with you and it's full circle and we're doing a video together, Josh, it's like super special to me. Like, honestly, I really it means the world to me. Like, it really does. Like, it's just honestly, like, I never would have thought, like, when we were going through all these things, I had my YouTube channel, and I never would have thought that we would have came to a place where we would be doing this. So, and our podcast, Love and Level Up, it's just been a beautiful year. Like, it just means like so much to me.
Yeah, it's all about clarity, and hopefully that could be a testimony for your life moving forward too, in terms of the new decade that's upon us in 2020. It's all about clarity and just having a clear vision on what's next, and making decisions that is clear and not in no way fog at all. So doing this YouTube video with Amanda is, again, in this entire year, it's just all about clarity for both of us. And so some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that we're implementing now is just going to produce more fruit in our lives later. And so because we're clear on what God has for us and we're clear on where we need to be, I think that everything just falls in place.
And that's our video. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. If you guys will have, more questions, or if you guys just have any suggestions for videos we should do in the future, let us know how you guys like this video. Were you able to relate? Are you currently going through a situation similar, so we can keep you lifted up in prayer? But yes, please give us your suggestions below. We would love to do more videos in the future. I can't promise Josh will always be here on my channel, because we have like a lot of stuff always going on. Our schedules are completely different, but we're open to doing, the highly requested videos in the future, of course. And make sure y'all subscribe to our podcast, Love and Level Up. Leave a rating, leave a review. Let us know what was your favorite episode, what's something new that you learned. Follow us on our social media platforms. Again, you can follow me at The Influence of Love. I'll have all my information in the description box. And you can follow Joshua at
The Last Level Up. You can follow me on Instagram and, you know, get a taste of who I am and what I'm trying to do. So we're just getting started. So, I mean, again, you guys follow, I'll follow back, or you want to shoot some love and show me some love on my Instagram page.
For sure, y'all. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye.
Peace.